welcome to Scribble Practice. Today I'm going to be doing some watercolor, and I don't do watercolor the way a lot of people do it. I just really play around and basically scribble with watercolor. It's a different way of doing it. Watercolor, I find, sometimes can be, I don't know, I guess serious is the word I'm looking for. It's like there's all these rules and it's kind of fine painting, and I don't really like to do that kind of thing. I once did a watercolor workshop and like a learn to do watercolor, and we started doing like creating pairs, and I was just like, oh, this is just so not for me. So I didn't go back actually to the class. I just decided that I would play around on my own. And honestly, I'm feeling a little bit nervous, not the right word, but maybe a little insecure today, because although I used to do watercolor a lot, I haven't picked up my watercolors very much recently at all. So, I don't know where one of the brushes are. Okay, well, I'll use a different one. Anyway, I like to, actually, you know, there's this great video by Andrea Nelson. She's an artist, and she does really quick, awesome, fun videos on Instagram and YouTube. So I'm going to link that because she sort of gives a really good introduction to watercolor if you've never used watercolor before. And she is playful and fun and not too serious. But I have to say, like, I really like to do watercolors in sort of, I like to do drips, and I like to do smudges, splatters. Well, I guess I would call that a smudge, and then I like to do little splatters everywhere. Those are sort of my favorite. And then I just like to see how the colors sort of collide together when you put them on the page. So this is definitely abstract watercolor. Definitely sort of playful and fun, just making shapes. So if you're not sure where to start and abstract is maybe feeling a bit challenging in this moment, maybe just start with what I started with in the middle, a big sort of stroke of color. You can do it with a big paintbrush like I did. This is quite large, 2 inches wide. Or you can, if you don't have that, you can just use a smaller one. And then just play around with that big stripe. Make some splotches, make it run down, do some drips, do some splatters, and just play and see what happens. That's what I'm all about here. Playing and seeing what happens. I bought a bunch of these yellows, these core watercolor yellows, because they were on sale, and I really like the core paints. I think they're fun, but the yellows are almost all the same color. It's like a little bit too much yellow, and I like yellow a lot. So. What else should I do here? Kind of thinking this is a really fun metallic. It's called duochrome emerald. I have a ton of watercolors because, as I said, like, one of the first things that I started with 10 years ago when I was starting doing sort of scribble style art is watercolor. Oh, I wanted to mix that actually. So I do have lots of colors. Because watercolor lasts a really long time, you need very little paint. And so, like, yeah, so I have 4 containers like this filled with different colors. And I was thinking just before I started this video that I need to rearrange the colors that are mixed together. Ideally, I would have 1 container per color. but I don't have enough room in the drawer and I don't want to take up 2 drawers. So anyway, mixed they are. Now this is a little bit more white than I was thinking. Just wanted to kind of tone it down a little bit, the color. So one of the things that I love about watercolor is, as I said, it moves around. You can't really control it. I mean, you can. People do. It takes a lot of effort to control it. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And I'm not interested in that kind of effort or that kind of control. It's like when controlling watercolor is like paddling upstream for me personally. I'd rather just let it do what it wants to do and see what the surprising results are like. Okay, another thing I love about watercolor is that the paint on the pan can be re-wet and used again. So there's very little waste. I love that. It makes me really happy. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I'm sensitive to smell in these art supplies. So I do love that watercolor doesn't have a smell. I love that the paints last a really long time and you need very, very little paint to do your thing. It's awesome. I think it's kind of cool that you can get like these from Daniel Smith. This is actual lapis in the paint. I think that's kind of neat that you can get colors that are made from stones. Some people really like watercolors in a pan. I don't tend to. I often like to apply watercolor really heavily. And so I will use very little water with a lot of paint. And I don't like what I did there, so there's that. That is the way when you're just kind of putting things on. Yeah, so I like to put watercolor on with a lot of pigment and not a lot of water. So for example, I like to just take it out of the tube like that and maybe just spread it on, because why not? You're not supposed to do that. It's not the way watercolor is supposed to be used, but that's what makes it more fun. You can sort of make palette watercolor really wet and maybe get some sort of effect like this, but it's just not quite the same. So after trying different ones out, like I do have palettes of watercolor as well, but trying out, I realized for me, for my style, for what I like to do with it, I like the tubes the best. But many people like the palette the best. It is maybe more convenient if you're traveling and stuff like that. And I feel like I'm kind of talking in this video like I'm an expert. I am not a watercolor expert at all. I am an expert at playing with watercolors because I do it and I've done it for a long time. That's my claim to fame. Expert player. Gotta get that one open. Try this one. I don't think I've used this color before. Yeah, so different watercolors also really spread in different ways. So I don't really like what I did there either. You know, doesn't really matter. We're just playing. I'm just letting you know that I don't always like everything that I make. And you shouldn't either, because if you like everything that you make, you might not be experimenting quite enough. Also, I've found that just because I don't like it doesn't mean other people don't. Also, when you do this enough, you know that sometimes you might not like it in the middle, but then you like it at the end. Also, watercolor is kind of cool because you can let this dry and then apply some stuff on top. But at this point, I usually, by the time I've got all this smudge of stuff that has happened here, I usually know I'm not gonna like the piece at the end. So that's cool. I'm just gonna do one more rainbow. I feel like I need another rainbow. Maybe I'll try a rainbow just with water here, see what happens. Maybe I need to drip it a bit. Oh, that felt so fun. Definitely like it a lot better too. And just like that. Just like that. Maybe I need to try another little bit of water here and see what happens if I then do that. Sorry, you probably can't see that on the camera. There. That's kind of neat, different, interesting. Okay, that's it for today for me. If you'd like to do another scribble activity, click right here. Otherwise, I will see you again tomorrow for another scribble practice. Bye!